And we're back here once again with another episode of the MSK show, and this is going to be episode 202. So I hope you guys had a great day, and I hope you guys had a great weekend as well, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week that is ahead of you, because after this episode of the MSK show goes live, you're probably watching this episode or listening to it, as I should say, on Monday, where your work week has began again. So don't worry, everyone goes through that. Man, the weekend was so great. Fuck, it's Monday. Damn it. Back to work, But in this episode of the MSK show, I'm going to be having a conversation with Aaron Sparrow. Once again, there's going to be his second appearance on the show. He's actually the third guy with the second appearance on this show. So the first one was Mugen Lord. I wanted to change it up because a white man was always doing it first. I had a black man have a second appearance. Then I had John's long boss for a second appearance last night. Then Aaron's like, you know what? I'm having my second appearance too. We were supposed to do the show last week, but he got sick. And I was like, okay, let's do it again this week, God damn, why are you so old, man? Where you always getting sick?
Man. I got home. Sundays are rough because I do a show on Sunday, so I got to do setup, tear down, and then get back. And I got like 2 hours before you do the show. So normally that's enough time to kind of unwind and be ready to go. But I crashed out when I got home last week, and then when I woke up right before my alarm went off so that I could do the show, and I woke up and I was like, oh, I feel like hot garbage. I was like, I am not going to be any fun at all. Like, I'm just gonna be miserable and cranky. It's gonna be like you're gonna have like Larry Hama on the show. He's just gonna be unhappy and mad. It's like even when you go to talk to him, he's just like a curmudgeon. Love the guy, but he's a total curmudgeon even when you meet him. So tonight was the I'm excited to be on the 202nd show. It's my second appearance on the 202nd show. This sounds like
I don't make the rules.
This sounds like a Two-Face plot, right? Like Two-Face is robbing the Second National Bank on his second appearance on the 202nd show.
Oh God! So there's so much comic book industry news to talk about, but I want to start with one that just kind of reminds me of something that happened in the '90s. Because people that remember with the '90s, what started in the '90s? Everyone, Power Rangers. And what was a big thing that the main actors said was the reason why they walked off the set of Power Rangers, which was, Austin St. John, who played the Red Ranger. You had the Black Ranger and the Yellow Ranger, who sadly passed away in a car accident in 2001. They left because they said the pay was so unbelievably bad, they could have just got jobs at McDonald's to support their families. They literally mentioned that they could have just got a job at McDonald's and that would have paid them more than acting in Power Rangers that became this like big worldwide phenomenon that, was still talked about and revered to this day. Hasn't had a new season in a little bit of time, but people said Disney's going to have a new season. To be fair, I will give credit because people are so disingenuous sometimes. But like Disney made some of the best seasons of Power Rangers. Yeah, this is Disney from like way back in the day when they actually did make good stuff. I don't trust Disney now making a Power Rangers season, but nevertheless, it was revealed that Marvel Comics in this year, 2025, paid people less money than if you were to work at like Five Guys, Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Burger King. Really? You're still paying less than the fast food places? So why work at Marvel Comics to be a writer? You can't be full-time. You would have to just essentially know going in, I'm going to be doing this part-time. And that's your dream job.
Listen, working in mainstream comics right now, unless you're a big name, it better just be a hobby for you because you're not going to be able to survive on it. Or you have to have a rich spouse, which a lot of comic people do. They marry doctors and lawyers, so that they can afford to work in comics. It's the only reason Jordan White's able to work in comics. Yeah, that guy, he's got a successful life.
Even Scott Snyder said it recently. He said he never even got into comics because he was trying to make a living off of it. He said that it kind of just happened. But given Scott Snyder's Twitter, he does kind of repost the right-approved politics things, if you guys know what I'm saying.
Well,
he doesn't give his opinion on him, but he'll retweet them. I'll see it.
Yeah, he's got to make sure that he doesn't upset Heather Antos because she'll call him out again, and then he'll have to scrape and crawl like he did before to make sure.
The past election, he did. He finally broke his silence. The last election in November, he was like, I'm voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. He said, I feel like they're the best candidates for my kids' futures. And it's like, all right, you're a crackhead. If that's what you actually believe, sure, you can vote for whoever you want. That doesn't make you any less stupid. That's the only time I heard him actually really speak about it, but he'll mostly just retweet like stuff against Elon Musk and Trump and in wokeness and all that stuff. And it's like, dude, you have a perfectly great position you are in right now. You're not oppressed in any way possible. This guy was a school teacher, he said, or principal, or whatever the fuck he was back in his previous life. But that's the same guy who would tell you, "No, man, it was so hard for me." Hard for you with what? You made good decisions. That's why you're in the position that you're in. Scott Snyder, credit to him, wrote the last decent Batman story that everyone knows about. I'll ask you this, man, because I saw people this too. Outside of Court of Owls, which came out back in 2012, and not Tom King's run, because that was really, really divisive amongst people. I have to go read it, but I heard it was really divisive. Outside of Court of Owls, can you think of a Batman story that is as talked about and as liked as Court of Owls in the last 10 years?
Since Court of Owls?
Since Court of Owls, yeah. Because he wrote Batman Eternal, which didn't get that much attention.
There have been some really good Batman stories that I think stuck the landing better than Court of Owls, but they're not talked about.
They didn't get as big, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like,
but I think that part of Court of Owls is the fact that he had Greg Capullo on art. That's part of the reason of what everybody
remembers. A lot, yeah. Because we were really trying to think, like, what's the last Batman story that really hit like Court of Owls did? It's hard to think about this. It's crazy because it's Batman. Batman should have like the best writers on it, no matter what the time or scenario of any year. Actually, I firmly believe Spider-Man and Batman should always have best writers, no matter what. It's Spider-Man and Batman; they're the biggest money makers. But no, man, Zeb Wells on Spider-Man. I read the first trade paperback for Zeb Wells' Spider-Man run. I was like, man, this is as good as it gets. Because if it gets worse than this, that's bad. That's really bad.
It's almost like Marvel thinks that because there's a certain amount of Spider-Man copies we're going to sell every month anyway, no matter who writes it, we don't have to put top talent on it. That seems to be the philosophy.
Yeah.
Or they've just run through, like they've run off everybody with any kind of like talent or cash, to their name that would, like the X-Men. Tom Brevoort takes over the X-Men. He went through a laundry list of people who told him no before he managed to land on, Gail Simone picking up the phone on the first call.
It's like being at the bar and you haven't hit any girls up to get their numbers or Instagrams or whatever, and you just are settling with the fat chicks that have no other better options than you. Like, you think you're on this level, but no, you missed out so much that now you have to be on this level. It's like, man, didn't Jim Lee, Tom Brevoort asked Jim Lee to run it for him? Jim Lee said no, because that's the funny joke. Jim Lee doesn't do work, guys. What does he do? What does Jim Lee really do outside of that diamond thing he did some years ago? That was like the only thing he really ever did, honestly.
Well, everybody said that even in the meetings where he's supposed to be like the co-publisher with Dan DiDio, he would just sit there and doodle and not really contribute. And it's like things were better under Dan DiDio. I know a lot of people don't like Dan, and a lot of people, but
he's
at the end of the
crazy.
day,
it's a crazy guy.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Dan DiDio is a hot dog vendor. He's like, I think this will sell. Oh, it's not selling. Well, let's change direction and try something else. He tried things, and they did. Like, I asked him at San Diego Comic-Con because I got to talk to him a little bit, and I was like, Dan, what was, like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Like, why did you do, what was the deal? Why were you planning 5G and things like that? And he goes, the same reason I did anything in comics. Seemed like a good idea at the time. And then he laughed. He was like, doesn't always work out that way. And I was like, all right, you know what? Hey, fair enough. At least you were trying to innovate. You were trying to do some stuff. You were trying to throw stuff against the wall and see what stuck. And I'll take some bold swings and misses over just the tepid garbage that we're getting like out of the Marvel X office right now.
Oh yeah. I haven't said this recently on some of my shows and my videos for my comic book channel. I will always criticize DC because they do some really fucked uply bad things, but they've recently tried to do some good stuff. They put some of their comics in Dollar Tree, which we've all talked about. Hey, just making comics visible to people in a big mass way in like businesses that a lot of people go to is a good thing. Like, people said, well, those books are bad. It doesn't matter they're bad. Just them being visible is all that matters. Just you being a visible medium in front of people is all that matters. Like, they got their books in a Dollar Tree. They had the DC's Finest collection. Those are really good. I like the compact comic idea. The compact comic idea was selling for them so well. Marvel copied that, and then they made theirs. Ours are going to be $15. Okay, Marvel. All right. The idea behind it is supposed to be a cheap jumping on point for the average person. Just, you got $12, I can get a whole book, completed story arc for a character I might really enjoy. Marvel's like, you know what? Good idea, DC. We'll charge $15 for ours. What's the difference between yours and theirs? Nothing.
We're Marvel. I mean, that used to mean something.
It used to mean something. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I see artists like so there's an artist that I really love. He started out first time I noticed him was when G.I. Joe was at IDW, A Real American Hero, and David Hedgecock came on as like the editor that was overseeing it. and he was like, this book needs a shot in the arm. And he hired Netho Diaz to come in and do the art. And it really did. It rejuvenated the art, because the art had just gotten kind of like tired and it was not interesting. And it was like, yeah, this guy's going to be a star. And now he's on X-Men. And he should be a star. That should be a career-making book. And it's not anymore, because X-Men is terrible. They ruined it, over and over again. Like they went through Age of X. Then they had a little bit of a jump start with Powers of X, House of X, and that got people interested again. People were, super into it. And then they went into Krakoa, and then Jordan White sided with a bunch of no talent hacks instead of following Jonathan Hickman's plan, because he's a goofy dude on a unicycle, just juggling, go, ooh, look at me. Just what does Wes call him on Thinking Critical? The the lead doofus in Legion of Doofuses over at Marvel. So he tanked the X-Men with the whole Krakoa thing, which dragged on way too long and was way too terrible and employed way too many hacks. And then Tom Brevoort comes in with no interest in the X-Men. It's just a job he's forced to do by the publisher. And he decides, all right, well, these are the people that we're going to hire. And every book is getting canceled by the 10th issue, which is thoroughly predictable.
I like what you said on one of the videos you did with Wes. I had to steal it. The book was canceled the moment it was announced. I love it.
Yeah, the moment you hired that writer, the book was canceled.
Yeah, the same thing with DC when they announced Blue Beetle or Power Girl or fucking like anything like off title that no one really cares about, like Two-Face and all that stuff. Two-Face with his own solo series. Yeah, okay. That's canceled. That's only going to get 6 issues. And the reason why they say 6 issues is because they know it'll not sell anything past the first one. And that's a barely, maybe, if that.
Yeah, because your orders for number 1 will be your best, and then number 2 will get cut in half. Because that's typically how it works. Yeah. Because there's collectors that just buy number 1, so shops know order more of number 1.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, like, you should order more of number 2, because in the long run, number 2s end up, if it's a series that has some demand behind it,
right,
which nothing does anymore. That's the thing. Is like you have all these 6-issue series that come out, whether they were intended as ongoings or they were intended as miniseries. And they just end up being miniseries, and then nobody ever talks about them after they end, and nobody ever goes back to look for them. So they don't end up being valuable at all. Maybe one day in the future, if comics survives, people are going to go back to this era of comics and just pick out terrible characters and be like, I can make this character good, and then bring them back and make them good. And then everybody will go looking for those first appearances, and they'll be really rare because nobody ordered the book because it sucked.
Same thing Marvel does with Sam Wilson, Captain America. Like, after so many failed attempts, they've just landed on doing Sam Wilson 4-issue miniseries that we know has already fizzled out after just the number 1 spike, because it's just no one's talked about it. No one gives a fuck that it exists. That's the worst part, is that they do things for characters. You get to a point where no one cares for it at all. There's not even an interest in a number 1 spike, because they know they just don't like the idea. The idea of it is so off-putting to them. Like, I don't get why they keep trying to make Sam Wilson Captain America a thing. It's obviously not something people like. But then Marvel people that work with them will be like, your fans are racist. You know what? There's people buying your books. So if that's who you got, that's who you got. They seriously do not like the audience they have. They think they can just get a different audience. And it's like, no, it's a bunch of audience
since 2016. Your audience is your audience.
Yeah. If your audience is a bunch of MAGA supporters, I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's your audience. You might want to cater to those people.
That's who you need to pitch to then. Like, I'm not saying that you need to make a bunch of books that are like, pro-Trump or, or Trump arrives and saves the Justice League. I'm not saying any of that. You could just be not political, and you could just do the kind of books that they want, which are just kind of like straight down the middle superhero adventures, tales of heroism and tales of, but everybody wants to do like this activist garbage where it's like you set up all these straw mans. It's like, oh, here's the Red Skull, and he's talking like Jordan Peterson. Okay, I don't know anybody in the world who ever said, who would make a great supervillain in a comic book? Jordan Peterson. Like, nobody has ever said that in the entire history of humanity. It's not compelling. It's not interesting. It just makes you look petty and dumb.
Yeah.
You have to go in with an idea, and nobody wants to do that anymore. The fact that they keep trying Captain America Falcon, it's the soft bigotry of low expectations. Well, Falcon could never be important enough on his own, so we better make him Captain America. It's like, no, everybody liked Falcon. You probably could have done a successful Falcon book before you made people dislike him. And the reason people dislike him is because you changed his character to keep him in this role of Captain America. And then you do a new number 1, and what's like one of the first things that happens in the series? Segregation picnic. It's just, all of the black superheroes together. They didn't invite any of their white friends, any of their Hispanic friends,
Was the
any,
Boston mayor?
no Atlanteans, no Kree, just it's the weirdest thing. And it's like you turn the page and you look at it, and I can't remember which character it is, but there's a character that I swear is supposed to be Tony Stark. Maybe it was in the script, but the colorist, because of what was going on, just colored it as Rhodey. And I could be wrong, but that's the way that my brain interpreted it. but then you look at the rest of the book and you're like, oh no, it probably was never Tony Stark. It probably was always meant to be Rhodey. But
so this is something that we talked about on a panel show Wednesday a few weeks ago when it was me, Laps, and Lunchbox Warren and Professor Savage. Do you think this idea can work? Because DC, I'm pretty sure you would agree that they've done it a little bit better. Do you think the idea of like having a character and having someone else kind of take it over is inherently a bad idea? Or do you think it's only bad when it's executed badly? Because DC, as much as that they've had faults, they've managed to make variant versions of popular characters with certain writers that make them good. So I think sometimes it's only based off of, like you said, editorial team has a big problem with it and the writer. Do you think there at any point there could be someone that could write a version of Sam Wilson Captain America that could be good? But just the idea of it.
Sure. Actually, I liked the first arc of the series when they gave him the mantle. And Rick Remender wrote that first series because he wrote a very Captain America type story. And it was a fish out of water because it's Sam now having to carry the mantle of Captain America. And he's in this big Hydra plot with Baron Zemo and, and him having to react to it. And it was really compelling because you were still telling a Captain America story with a guy who does not have the experience of Steve Rogers. And that made it interesting. Of course, they let Rick Remender go. They let him scurry out of there because they let Kelly Thompson go to work on him and say that he did a story where Sam Wilson was with an underage girl, which was, what was her name? Something black, something noir, jet black, because some people online started claiming that she was underage. She wasn't, and then Kelly Thompson ran with that, and so Rick Remender walked. He was like, you know what, screw this, I'm not working for you ever again. And he's one of the people they called to do X-Men when they got out of the Krakoa era. And he said, I don't know if he said exactly this, but I assume the sentiment was, you can go piss up a rope because you guys didn't defend me. You guys just left me to the wolves because of the time that it was. That wasn't the case. And nobody had my back. Because
I don't inherently disagree with the idea that a sidekick could be that. But the problem here is like, I think there's so much nuance to it. People just kind of played in like this big black and white fashion. Like Chuck Dixon was able to take Robin, who was just in Batman's shadow, make him into his own character, give him his own setting. I think it really has to be the right writer for it to happen. Like people like Jon Stewart, who wasn't the first Green Lantern, but people do happen to like that guy. Some people like Nightwing more than Batman.
I liked Rhodey when he took over for drunk Tony Stark. I just bought the Secret Wars figure, the Iron Man Secret Wars figure, and everybody's like, oh
yeah, like I don't think
Rhodey,
the idea
Rhodey in that armor,
yeah. I don't inherently think the idea is bad. It really just comes down to execution, honestly. Because
let's look at some of the times.
Batman Beyond, an example too. Terry McGinnis is one of them for a lot of people.
Yep, Terry McGinnis, Batman Beyond. We've got Connor Hawke, Green Arrow. That worked.
Sure. Yep.
We've got Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern. That worked.
People love him. Yeah, fan favorite.
Rhodey as Iron Man worked.
Yep.
The problem is none of these things.
Tim Drake, he came on.
Yeah. Tim Drake came on, took up the mantle of Robin. That worked.
Yep.
Now, granted, it's still a new character stepping in. He didn't really have like the mentor role. He just kind of came in, but it still counts, I think. Wally West as the Flash.
That's probably one of people's favorites. Yeah. I mean, the first one. Not even Barry's the first one. Yeah,
there's a certain promise that comes with the sidekick. The idea that one day they'll take over the mantle, but it has to be earned. You can't just cram a character in there. And that's why when they killed Steve Rogers and Bucky stepped into the role, it didn't get nearly the backlash. And that had nothing to do with race. It just had to do with the fact that Ed Brubaker built that story and it made sense. With Falcon Cap, it made less sense and it smelled of agenda. But then Remender wrote a good first story. And so people were like, oh, okay. And then Remender left and the book got handed to, I want to say it was... who's the guy that did Spider-Man and actually did a good job? Nick Spencer. So they got handed it to Nick Spencer when he was in the full midst of his TDS meltdown.
Oh, no.
And then all of a sudden Sam was a different character
Mhm.
And everything in the book was about race. And it's like, well, that's not how it started out. It just started out because Sam was Captain America and he was a fish out of water and he was having to learn the ropes. And that's why it worked with Wally too. Back before Mark Waid went completely insane, he was only partially insane. When he stepped into the Flash, it's almost like he channeled his insecurity of having been a fan of the Flash and the Flash creators that had done such, like Gardner Fox and everybody who had done such amazing work on the Flash. It's almost like he stepped in and he channeled that insecurity of taking on the mantle of a Flash writer and put it into Wally. And that was Wally's story. Wally was having to live up to the mantle of Barry, even though I always say Barry really never did anything interesting up until that point, but died. A lot of his stories were just very much of the Silver Age. It was like, I'm strapped to a big giant boomerang that Captain Boomerang is throwing, it's, stuff like that. The Silver Age was wacky. But it worked. And it's because it's earned. But they don't want to do that anymore. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to show you how a character starts out and nobody's really sure how they're going to do. And even their colleagues are kind of like, no. Now everybody has to be validated immediately. Marvel used to be the place where the characters fought and the characters had conflict amongst themselves. And that's what set them apart at DC when it was Lee and, when Lee and Kirby and Lee and Ditko were doing these books, is the characters had problems. That's what set Marvel apart. And now Marvel is the bland milquetoast. Everybody gets a participation trophy, hero group.
Oh, the other one, it just came into my head, where you can make a character something that they weren't before, which you had Oracle, who was Barbara. She got shot. She turns into Oracle. There's even other ways of making a character not just take on a mantle, becoming something completely different from what they originally were intended to be, But like you said before, there's just the creativity is just so few far in between. It just doesn't, no work wants to be put in for them to earn this spot, or a tragedy that makes sense to the point where it could go into a position where it could make sense, that you could understand this is where the character's at. Like Ultimate Spider-Man, we talked about earlier off the show, but I think Ultimate Spider-Man is a better book so far in the first 6 issues I've read than Absolute Batman, because there's just more substance there. There's more love. There's more sweet, wholesome moments. There's serious moments, but it feels more complete. Like, it feels like it's an actual character going through something, where like Absolute Batman just kind of feels like, big guy punches stuff. He has his flashbacks about his childhood with his dad that he loves, but that's it. I don't know. I just found Ultimate Spider-Man just a lot better of a book, honestly.
It's like, what if, it's like we were discussing a little bit before the show came on, but it's like, what if Jack Reacher were Batman? And what if it was, what if it was produced by J.J. Abrams and his idea is everything's bigger, and then it's directed by Michael Bay, so everything blows up. That's like what Scott Snyder's doing on Absolute Batman, and it's fun in its way. We joke on Aficionados and we call it Big Dumb Batman, because it's like we understand that, like, he's being written like he's smart and things like that, but he just tears through things like a big dumb oaf. And we were joking that it would be funny if instead of the very famous, throwing the Joker around in the Dark Knight going, where are they? Where he said, like, it'd be great if he comes in and Gordon's like, Batman, the crime, this is crime scene all ready for you. There's some fingerprints over here. And Batman just starts beating up Gordon. What are they? They're fingerprints, Batman. What are they? They're the prints on your fingers, and sometimes they get left behind from the oil on your skin. What are they? That feels like Scott Snyder's Batman to me. It feels like a big dumb parody. And it's fun, but like, if I were in any way taking the book seriously, I would not be having fun with it.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I was thinking about it. Like, last night, I was working on editing my review for issue number 2, and I was like, this is the issue where the dump truck Batmobile comes out. I, for the life of me, can't remember what the hell happened in issue 3. I can't remember what happened in issue 3 at all. I have to actually open the book and flip through, like, okay, this is what happened. Issue 4, I remember. That's the one where he had his flashback with his dad. Issue 5 is when they kind of take over. It's like, man, maybe it'll feel better in a trade, but I feel like it's kind of rather forgettable, and it shouldn't be. It should be the Batman stories. I feel like should be the kind of impactful. You should kind of remember them in some way, whether it be good storytelling or maybe good action, right? I think the idea is there, but it's just Bruce not having money because these guys at DC just don't like rich people. Like, he's smart. He's got muscles. He's cunning. He's a tactician. He just doesn't have anything but money. It's just money that's not a part of it. He's basically Bruce, as you remember. Oh, he has his mom. Okay.
How do you buy a dump truck without any money?
He's an engineer, apparently.
But do they just hand out dump trucks to engineers? Like, you get the engineer job and they go, here's your dump truck.
From what Alfred said,
congratulations.
He learned every single thing about Gotham City to the point where he can, like, move these parts in by himself. But it's like, wait a minute. he's in. That's what I was trying to remember. Like that's why that dump truck thing made no sense. It's because he's apparently this smart and he knows everything about the city and he's getting these parts all together. It's like how is he not being secret about it? Because you would notice if a big giant tire was gone, right? Like.
Well, no, I mean it's government work, so stuff goes missing all the time. I mean, I'm in California, and $29 billion, that was set aside for Gavin's 10-year plan to end homelessness that's gone past.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, the $29 billion just disappeared. Yeah. So it's like you just do like the Pentagon. He gets to be city engineer and he's deciding these budgets and he's like, we budgeted this for this, but I've skimmed this off of here. Okay, so now you're a criminal, Batman. Now you need to arrest yourself. My favorite part about that is when they're in the dump truck and he's like, get to my car, and he's like, this is a car, and then drives off with the dump truck, and I was like, oh, what's next? When he's in the city building and Alfred's like, we need to get to the car, and he's like, the city building is a car, and drives the whole city building down the road.
Also,
he had time to engineer that. He had time to put giant wheels that he hid on the building, and it's ready to go.
Like it's crazy when you read it, but it's like, how did Alfred not notice he was in there? How did you not notice you were in this thing? This is a guy that's a spy, allegedly, that can do all these things hidden behind the shadows that he analyzes and stalks people's movements. How did he not notice it was in a giant dump truck? That doesn't make any sense at all. It's just, I think they're just going for all style over substance for Absolute Batman so far.
Yeah, and that's fine. You can do that, but I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm just going to try to enjoy it for the nonsense that it is.
Absolute Wonder Woman, to me, I got to the first 3 issues. I'm waiting to review the 4th issue with Warren. Feels like it's a slice of life book.
I mean, that's Kelly Thompson. I kind of got out of it. I like the Wonder Woman design. I like a lot of the covers that they did. It's like, I didn't love the tattoos on the arm, but I guess it's a spell. I stopped reading, I dropped out. So like Wes was telling me, like, no, it's a spell.
Which issue made you go, not worth my time?
I don't even remember. I just remember being bored and like, maybe it was a 2nd issue and I was just kind of like, nah.
The first issue was good. I actually enjoyed the first issue. It was real. I was like, this is good. And then issue 2 comes like that episode of TV where it's just talking and talking. You're like, oh, okay. 3rd issue, she's saying like, okay, let's go take on this thing. But she has to talk again. She has to stop fighting the main villain to talk to this other character, the one that's irrelevant. It's like, it's not a bad book, but it's like, I was expecting more. I haven't read up to Superman.
No, you can kind of almost feel like Scott Snyder helped on the first issue. Like he's like, here's the premise and here's what needs to happen, and gave like an outline to Kelly Thompson that she had to follow. So that was why it came off. But then once left to her own devices, she just fell back on the lazy things.
Yeah, she definitely had editorial help on issue 1 because
a bunch of talking. I mean, that's my theory. I don't know for sure, but
because like on the second 2 issues, it's not like they're a drag to read. It's just more like, this got any pace to it. It's going to be going somewhere. Because I feel like both the books so far, because I have to go through Absolute Superman, I don't know if these have any staying power or if this was just some cheap gimmick to boost up sales because their sales were tanking at DC for a while there. They had like nothing else to go off because, Dawn of DC failed because they were like, you know what? We don't even need a Justice League. You mean that really, really popular group that everyone kind of associates your company with? No, we don't need them. We need the Teen Titans.
And they haven't learned the lesson that they had before, because there was another time they didn't have a Justice League. And then in the 90s, they were like, maybe we should have a Justice League. And then Grant Morrison and, Grant Morrison did the Justice League book, and it was huge. People were going nuts over it.
There's something I wanted to ask you that you brought up on one of your episodes with Wes. Mark Waid, you actually did have a sort of working relationship with him, and then he found out that you were Comicsgate, but you're not Comicsgate. So he thought you were because he's mentally deranged. And he said he called you, and he said he was disappointed in you because he thought you had joined Comicsgate. If anyone knows you, you don't subscribe to that. You don't do groups like that. You just do your own thing. How deranged of a person are you? Mark, you're insane.
Here's what happened is I don't know if you can say that you worked. I don't know if anybody ever really works with Mark or I was at Boom and he was editor-in-chief in name, but that was just kind of like, I mean, he may have been like actively editor-in-chief before I got there, but by the time I got there, they didn't want him in the office anymore. And he had done Irredeemable. And I don't even know if he knows this because they talked a lot of shit behind his back.
Of course they did. He's mentally deranged.
Yeah, but I mean, but they weren't any better. Like they said some things about him that I don't think are provable, and I don't even necessarily think are true. Like some rumors about him and like Thailand and things like that. Like that's the kind of way that they would talk about him. And I remember I had one artist come to me who had gone to a convention and he was in the car with the the editorial, not like my end of editorial, but like the higher up, your managing editor and your marketing. And he came to me and he's like, do these guys like, he goes, they talked such mad shit about Wade. And I was like, oh, just ignore it. Like that's what they do. And I was like, just don't think that they're not going to talk shit about you behind your back. Like just don't think that you're safe. Because nobody is, obviously. If Wade's not safe, nobody is. And so, I did some work with him, and I had some good experiences, some bad experiences. Didn't really think much of it. But when the whole Comicsgate thing was kicking off, I had been talking about customer service in the comic book industry for a long time, because that's when the industry really had started to attack the fans. This is where Dan Slott was telling fans F you. And I was like, no, you can't do that. Like this is a service industry, despite what you want to think about it. You're asking people to buy a product that you're putting out. That's the service industry. So you need to have a customer service mindset. And because I had taken that tact, even though I wasn't Comicsgate and I wasn't affiliated with the guys in it, but I'll just talk to anybody on Twitter. If you message me, I'll talk to you. I don't discriminate that way. I got this message on Facebook from him, and it just said, "I'm disappointed in you, Aaron. I didn't realize you'd become a Comicsgate apologist." And I sent him back, and I like unloaded for like a full page about like, the damage that was being done to the comic book industry by that kind of attitude, and just like tore into him, and then didn't hear back from him. Of course.
You even talked to him since when was that last paragraph message you sent to him?
Oh, it was right at whenever Comicsgate was starting up. It may have even been
like 2017, late 2017-ish.
It was when it was still like guys like Captain Frugal and Doug Ernst.
Oh God.
It was before like Richard had just come onto the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was where
roughly the 2017 period.
Yeah. But it was before Ethan jumped in and made it about him. Made it his thing. It was when there was just a bunch of loose YouTubers talking.
So you even talked to Mark Waid in roughly about almost 6 to 7 years.
No, but we were never friends. I mean, even when I worked there, we were never friends.
You just kind of knew of him, actually. Could you tell he was kind of mentally not there when you were working with him?
I mean, yeah, I could tell he didn't like people.
Okay.
He flat out told me that on a flight. Like, I'm gonna put my headset in. I don't like talking to people. I was like, oh, okay. Like, all right, sure. I mean,
then again,
I'm one of the people sitting right next to you, but okay, that's fine.
That's kind of the joke in itself. It's like, Mark, we don't want to talk to you either. It's great. It's perfectly fine, honestly.
I mean, the thing is, I would have liked to have talked to him because, he's been in the industry for a long time. He's written a lot of stories that I still love to this day.
He is talented. I hate when people kind of dogging him for his person. He is talented. You can tell there's something there. Even when you read a story of his that isn't even that good, there's something there. But he's just so deranged. You're just like, I don't even want to give my time to this guy, Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be like the armchair psychologist, but I think that, I just always say that if Mark could feed the better part of his nature more than he feeds the need to grandstand and be pat on the back, he could be a pretty great guy. Because I've seen him do some things that were pretty magnanimous, and not brag about them, not put them out there in the public sphere. So it's just it's one of those things where it's like everybody's complicated, and everybody's got their problems and has their demons to fight. And some people actively choose to fight their demons, and other people choose to give in to them. So until you can, a lot of people in the industry need to go to therapy. That's what I'm saying. Like, just go get some help, go talk some stuff out. Stop trying to do your therapy on the page and make the readers pay for it. Tom King, just go get some actual help and try to get your mind right.
The last thing, because when you were here last time for your first appearance, we kind of did like the origin story, stuff like that. I never got a chance to ask you about Kneel Before Doomface. So, what was the conception behind that? You were tired of what they were putting out in the industry. You realized that if you created anything for Marvel and DC, more or less so Marvel, they wouldn't treat you like you created it. They treat it like you're privileged to be on our platforms. You made it for us because you love us so much. That's gotta hate that sometimes. So what was the final straw for you making your own thing? Was it an argument you have with someone? You're like, you know what, fuck it. I just want to make my own thing.
No, you know what it was? Is like, I'd always told stories, and there's a couple of characters in it that I had told stories with. And then a couple of the characters are like characters that I would play in City of Heroes, City of Villains, that I created for that. And I just had this idea of wanting to do my own book, especially, because the kind of things that I like are not really present in the comic book industry. One of the things I really like is I like humor, like The Tick, Sam and Max, obviously Darkwing Duck. I like kind of that superhero spoof, but I also like having some stakes, so like a Venture Brothers type, comedy series, or like an Archer, where there's a lot of comedy in it, but there's still stakes and people die and, tragedies happen and there are some heartfelt moments. I really like to try to find that balance. So I wanted to do that. And once I realized that I was not interested in working for the big two anymore, because the industry was not what I recognized. The Marvel and DC that I loved no longer exist. It's a bunch of people that hate the customers, that hate the characters, and just want to use them as vehicles for their activism or to try to get a TV show. I realized that even if it was right after I did the Justice League pitch. I did a Justice League Unlimited pitch with Lionel Castellani, and James Silvani was going to be involved. And they were going to, what we kind of pitched was that Castellani would do an arc on art, and then Silvani would do an arc on art, and that would allow them time to do their best work.
Who's going to be your Justice League? Who's going to be your starting five?
Well, it was going to be unlimited. We were going to do Justice League Unlimited, so it was going to be a rotating cast. Okay. So Castellani and I did I didn't write a first issue spec script. I wrote a second issue spec script. Because the first issue, you got to reestablish everything. You got to introduce everybody. Everybody kind of knows what that looks like. So I was like, here's the storyline that we're going to do. We're going to go back and we're going to show you what was only referenced in the cartoons, which is in Batman Beyond. They talk about 2009, and that was the year that everything fell apart and Ra's al Ghul almost won. I was like, so I want to build that story and then tell that story. And so I started out with a second issue pitch. I wrote the full script. I think Watchtower Database, I think they have a copy of it. I don't know if they've ever done a video on it, but I sent it to them because they wanted to find out what we were gonna do. And so Castellani drew 5 beautiful pages, fully colored. Darren Bennett lettered them. It is a full 5 pages. You can find it on it's on Twitter. If you look up my name in Batman Day, it should pull it up, and you can just read all 5 pages. Which is a little setup with the Suicide Squad. But it was just, I'm going to show you how I know these characters. I can make them all have individual voices and personalities and do some exciting stuff that the fans will like. And so we open on dinner on like a dinner date with Bruce and Diana. And so the idea was that fans have been asking for hashtag WonderBat for the longest time. We're gonna tease it. We're gonna show their first date. Bruce has finally relented. Diana's finally worn him down. And then we're going to kind of tell the story of their relationship in the midst of all of this terrible stuff that's going to start to happen. And a lot of things that Bruce has done in the show are going to come back to haunt him, little loose ends and things like that. And we're going to introduce Prometheus into the animated universe. We're going to bring him in and set this whole thing up. So when it got some attention, we were in talks, and then we just got ghosted. And I don't know if the people were no longer at DC that we were talking to, or they just decided they didn't like me, or I don't know what the deal was, but that happens in comics all the time. You just get ghosted by an editor, they get fired, they quit, they just disappear, they go on the lam, whatever it is that happens.
It's like a very reoccurring thing in a lot of people's stories is I just got ghosted, I never knew why. Man, that's so defeating.
Well, look, I mean, if it can happen to Jeff Johns at DC, it can happen to me, right? Who the hell am I? Yeah. So it was at that point that I was like, I'm so tired of doing work, of pitching good stuff, seeing the absolute drizzling shit that they put out. And I'm pitching good stuff, and my friends are pitching good stuff, and it just doesn't get picked up. I was like, and what am I doing this for anyway? What am I going to get out of it? I'm not going to get any money. I'm not going to get any royalties. I'm just going to be able to say that I did it. And I did later get to write an episode of Young Justice, so that was fun. So I did kind of scratch that itch of writing some DC heroes. But I was just like, I won't own any of this. And DC's deal is better than Marvel's, but what is really the point? I want to do, and at the same time, we were repitching for Darkwing Duck, and we almost had the license for it before Dynamite swooped in and pulled it out from under us, and then ended up putting out some really mediocre Darkwing books. But it was at that point that I was like, what am I doing? I need to just focus on my own stuff. I need to own my own IP so that I can do my own merch, so that I don't have to ask anybody permission for storylines that I want to do or jokes that I want to tell, or, like there's no approval person that's going to tell me, no, you can't do this because my big book of rules says thus and so. Darkwing can't be on the cover with his gas gun because suddenly we're not allowed to have any kind of guns on the cover, even if they have a grappling hook in them, because of leftist ideology. I just got tired of it. And I was like, I want to do my own thing. And so I had these characters and I had this, kind of like general idea. And I was like, but I don't want to just do a superhero book, because there's a million superhero books, even in the indie space. A lot of people are doing superhero books, some really good stuff, but what's going to make my series different? And as I was creating new villains for the series, I always liked Dr. Doom. And I was like, I want a Dr. Doom style villain, maybe with a mix of Skeletor, some Hordak, all that 80s goodness mixed in. Primeval from the, the Ghostbusters that had the gorilla. And so I arrived at Doomface because I thought it was funny to have a character say, I am Doomface, the face of your doom. It's kind of ridiculous and kind of fun. And so as I started developing Doomface and then gave him a major domo, and that became Lexi, it was just like, I was kind of like, this is my wrinkle. The main story is Doomface coming back and trying to reestablish himself. And then the B story is the superheroes. And it'll be kind of like a meta commentary on what if being a superhero was like trying to break into the modern day comic book industry and have the same egos and the same petty activists and the same nonsense as the comic book industry,
Yeah.
And that's a bigger challenge for them often than the villains, is just having to deal with their own peers. And it just kind of like all came together. And so I wrote up a script. I sent it around to some friends of mine. Everybody kind of liked the concept. And I got a really good note from Jesse Blaze Snyder, who I think has he been on your show?
I know who that is. Yeah,
no?
He's a friend.
Okay. Yeah. So Jesse,
he has this thing where you ask him, what's your favorite color? And then he'll tell you what his favorite car is by the end of that conversation. You
just light the fuse. And then one of the reasons I love hanging around with Jesse is because often I found myself having to, like, especially when you were with people that were more shy or I had to be the center of attention. So I had to entertain.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is when you're hanging out with Jesse, you can just light the fuse and then just step back and relax for a bit. Well,
this man will tell you his favorite color, movie, TV show, how he met his wife, and what car he owns in 30 minutes. I'm just like,
yeah.
I just asked you what your favorite burger was, man.
Well, that's the thing. Jesse is so sincere, and everything comes from such a place of sincerity that, like, he's just an open book, and he'll just tell you everything. So I got a really good note from him because he said, I like it, but when you pitched it to me, it's the premise that sold me on it. And I don't think you get to the premise fast enough. And so I was like, fair. That's a very good note. So I went back and I rewrote it and get to the premise, like within, like the Doomface premise is established, and then the secondary premise is established, right after that. So that's kind of how it all came together. And I'm so proud of this first issue. We're almost done with it. It's still available for late pledges if anybody wants it. You just go to Kneel Before Doomface on Kickstarter. And you can back the book. There's a digital option. If you're like, I don't want to spend a lot of money, I just kind of want to, check it out. There's a digital option there. But I already know how the story ends, and it's just how we get there and how many stories we tell in between.
You're gonna have a 6-issue miniseries or a 5-issue miniseries?
I'm gonna take it as long as I have ideas for it. Okay. So the ending is such that the ending can happen at any time. So it's just how many stories we have to tell in between there. And fortunately, because a lot of it is a parody, there's so many things to parody in the comic book industry right now. They're coming out so fast that I don't like, I'm like, oh my God, like there's too much. There's too much to do. There's too much to mock.
If there's ever a series where you just focus on Doomface's butt.
Nothing but Doomface.
God, man. The fact that they just made that a digital exclusive, but then chose to make the Harley Quinn fart book a thing, it's like, what is
well, because you needed the scratch and sniff, you really needed
right.
Really schooled the
shit. God. Because I wanted to ask you this. Have you ever written any novels?
I've nothing that's published, but I have written.
What do you think is harder to do, writing a novel or making a comic book? Because I would think making a comic book is harder just off the sheer aspect of getting an artist, being on page with an artist, lettering, and all that stuff that goes along with it. Because with a novel, it's just you and your thoughts there, and you can write them all out and then edit them with an editor. I just feel from a cost point, a logistic point of view, I think a comic book is just harder to make Look at all the
there's
different
there's more,
factors.
there's far more moving parts in a comic book. Because like
Yeah.
you said, when you sit down with a novel, it's you. It's you putting everything on the page and then going back and refining it yourself. And then at some point, maybe an editor comes in and looks at it, depending on how you're going to publish it. But, or you could just put it out on Amazon, and then Amazon will use it to train its AI how to write and take your job.
Damn. Are you saying I'm going to lose to Wongino who eats soy sauce? Damn.
So yeah, comic books are more involved, but ultimately I think more rewarding because it is a collaborative process. And if you get the right collaborators, if you get the right carburetors, if you get the right collaborators, it's a thoroughly pleasurable experience. And I have been fortunate to work with some amazing collaborators. I had James Silvani on Darkwing Duck. I had Emilio Urdinalo on, I'm so tired. Emiliano Urdinola on Death Rage. I had Victor Serra on Miss Meow. These are people who really are enthusiastic about what they do, and they will do their best for you. And now I've got Renzo on Kneel Before Doomface, and just the leveling up that Renzo has done since his first conceptual drawings to the pages that he's turning in now. Like, I'm waiting for him to be like, can I go back and redraw a couple of those early pages? And I would be like, no, the book has to be finished, because he's gotten so much better, and he was already great.
Were you ever nervous when doing this? Because I'm pretty sure you saw the indie spaces is like, it's really hard to get people interested in something because that's just how the nature of creativity is. Were you ever kind of like hesitant on putting it out there because you thought that maybe it wouldn't hit with people? You maybe thought there wasn't going to be a lot of interest on there in your idea for this?
Yeah, I mean, you always wonder, like, do people actually, do they like my writing, or did they just like it because I was writing Darkwing Duck? And they liked Darkwing Duck, and they liked the way I wrote Darkwing Duck, and that's fine. And that's fine if that's the case, because certainly that's that happens to a lot of writers. You write Batman, and people are like gung ho for you writing Batman, or you're Jeff Johns, and you have this huge body of work that everybody loved, and you just came off 3 Jokers, which is fantastic, and you could go and do Ghost Machine, and you can't get retailers to sniff it, even though it's the best company in the comic book space right now, churning out the best books. And then you got Miller World churning out great books, and you got Skybound doing some great books with the Energon universe. So it's tough. And so the fear was that we just wouldn't fund, that I'd put this money into it, and that it was just going to be like, and at the end of the day I'd have some nice art from Renzo of a book that never got published.
But your campaign did very well because you launched it on Thinking Critical's YouTube channel. You did a live stream, and it did very well. It's just, when people first do this, they end up maybe making like 1,000 or 2,000, or they struggle to get their campaign funded. You somehow managed to get a ton of people interested based off what you did in the industry, and then by making decent connections. I tell people it comes from a matter of just making decent connections and not being a terrible person. Because people just kind of gravitate to personalities that they want to gravitate towards. That's what you said earlier. I think Tom Brevoort, people, they understand that. People just, that's how the nature is of the industry. And anything now, people just kind of gravitate to people that they like. There's no control over it. If you're the person they like, they come to you. This is how it works, Yeah,
I think even if you don't agree with all of the takes that we have on Thinking Critical, or me, or Wes, or Doc, or anybody who's on there, we're a mix. So there's a lot of opinions that we share, but then we'll bicker on the show.
Doc has harsh opinions. I've had him on.
Doc will. Doc. It's so funny because whenever I'm getting curmudgeonly, I'm like, am I turning into Doc? Am I like the new Doc? But and that's why my beard's so long right now. I'm actually manifesting Doc. So you worry that you won't connect. But I was really fortunate. I had some good advice from Aaron Lopresti, who does Wraith of God, which is a fantastic book. And he told me, when do you plan on launching this? And I said, well, like in a year. And he goes, you need to start talking about it now. And I was like, really? Like a year out? And he was like, no, you need to start like getting it in people's heads that this is coming. And then you're showing stuff off, and you're talking about the work that you're doing on it and things like that. He goes, because repetition is what gets people to remember. And so as we started to show stuff off, and new art was coming in, and it was like, this is a real thing, people got invested in it. And fortunately, I think that I've built up enough goodwill with the Thinking Critical audience, and with the YouTube audience that is aware of me, by being sincere, and actually caring about the customer, and caring about comic books, and wanting a better industry for all of us. I think that people responded. So we did really well. We're over 20,000. We're going to do another push right before we go to print to see if anybody wants to jump on late, and then we're going to go to print with the first issue. And I was nervous, and not only because of just, does anybody know who I am? Does anybody care? You know, or do they care about this book? You know, are they interested in it? But also because there's so many books in the crowdfunding space that get funded and then just never deliver, or take forever to deliver. And so you're up against that too. You're up against the people who take, you know, who've taken, you know, years and years, or you know,
I thought it's 5 years to wait for quality, man. What do you do? You're doing this backwards, man. It's supposed to be 5 years for quality because, you know, it takes that long to make a comic book.
I mean, you know, but that's the funny thing is, it's like, you know, we've all anybody who's been in the pro space has done comic books monthly. You know, it's like, I've written comic books monthly, I've edited comic books monthly, I've gotten comic books out monthly.
Yeah.
You know, and there can be hiccups and things like that, but it can be done. And there is a fair comment to be made that, you know, the monthly grind does not allow you to do the best work. It really does.
True. Yeah.
So that, I mean, there is a fairness to that, but also it shouldn't take 5, 6,
because it's supposed to show you the work ethic and time. It's, you know, because in fact, Ryan, as you know this, everyone's on a time schedule. Everyone's on a thing that they have to get done. You have a delay happen, then another person can do their work and all that stuff. I think being under a work structure, there's nothing really wrong with that per se. You know, I
set an amount of time for us to do the work. And so far, it looks like we're going to deliver right on time. I was actually hoping we'd be a little bit early, but you know, things happen. You know, people go through things.
When's the estimated fulfillment for the book?
So I want to be fulfilling it next month. I want it to be printed and fulfilling next month. That would make me happy. Mm-hmm. And we're Renzo should be done with inks tomorrow, and Oscar is right behind him on colors, and then it's just a matter of lettering, a matter of putting together the ancillary materials, getting all that ordered. You know, because I think all we really have to produce is stickers, and I have to paint a bunch of statues.
So just to clarify for you, because based off your experience, you do writing you're just the writer. That's it. Are you
the writer, and then I'm also acting as editor. I'm overseeing each page that comes in, approving, you know, getting it all assembled, getting it to who it needs to go.
So when do you buy a Lamborghini off the money you made?
Actually, you know, the funny thing is I have not made any money off of this personally. Everything that I've done, the only money that I took out of the campaign was to reimburse myself for some of the things that I had already paid for, and not even all of it, just a little bit. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you know, because it was 20,000 is nothing to sneeze at, but that doesn't go as far as you think.
Yeah, so, a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people see a big number and they just assume that you made all that money in profit. It's like, guys, if things work the way you thought, the world would be a great place, but it doesn't. You know, there's printing, paying for the artist. Obviously, I think shipping it. Oh my God, people don't understand why making a comic book is so much harder than writing a novel. Paying your artist, like, I'm pretty sure you pay your artist more than Marvel and DC do.
I'm paying more, I know I'm paying more than Dynamite rate. I know that.
Yeah. And it's like, so if you want to make a 24-page book, everyone, and your artist charged, let's just say 60 a page. Maybe that's industry rate. Who knows? 24 times 60. There you go. That's when just do the art. We've got to all the other problems that you have to do to get the book done. You know?
Yeah.
Like you're already out like what? By that $1,200, obviously. You're probably out just $1,000 just on that alone, not counting the other things you have to factor in. So, you know, I always tell people, man, I'm always glad someone else is able to do their own thing and get it done. But it is just, you know, you don't get into comic books to make money because we'd be doing anything else beside this.
No, and anything like, you know, at this point, like I have, you know, I have regular work that I do freelance work, you know, so I have money coming in that pays my bills and takes care of my wife. So the book, you know, until it really hopefully takes off in the next couple of volumes, then plus we're selling the back catalog, you know, hey, you're coming in on book 3. Well, we got book 1 and 2, you know, for you to buy too. You know, that's where you'll start making money. But my first concern is anything that we do, anything that's left after we fulfill the book goes to jumpstart the next book. And if possible, I'd love to give a bonus to Renzo and Oscar. That's the level I want to get to, is where I'm either giving them a better page rate because we did such a great campaign.
Yeah.
Or at the end, we've got money left over and then they get a bonus. You know, whichever, depending on which way the money comes in. Because, I mean, I own the IP. I can go doing whatever I want with it. And, you know,
so you sell it to Disney, obviously.
no. But if we ever got like an animation deal, or you know, or somebody want to make figures or things like that, whatever that comes in, you know, when that comes in, Renzo gets a piece of that, you know, automatically. that's he's getting a chunk of that because he's putting in the work. And I give him pieces of things when I say this character is going to be this, and I'm thinking, and I'll give him pieces of design and things like that, but he's got to tie it all together. And he's done some stuff that has like blown me away. There's a character named the Liger in the book, and he was just meant for a throwaway gag, and then maybe he'd show up, here and there, but he was just a joke character. And Renzo got so into designing him that he looks so freaking cool that I'm like, well, he's in the book as a regular now. Like, he's got to have his own stuff going on. So it's a lot of fun. It's a Trap Productions. Also looking forward to Doomface. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
What's up, Trap? How you doing, man? Hey, Laps.
Yeah.
How you doing, man? Laps, go to bed. This man just tells me he wakes up in his chair and listening to me. I don't know if you want to hear me if that's the first thing you wake up to. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, how did you end up meeting the community of people you have with Wes and Doc and Nick Weiser and all these people? How did that come about?
I was all through Wes. I was watching some comic book channels. I think I was watching like Captain Frugal, then I was watching somebody like review a comic, and then somebody like talk about the history of this book that I was like, what is this? Like an in-depth, deep dive on the Legion. I don't know everything about the Legion. Let me watch this. So I'd watch that and have it on in the background. And then as it would just cycle through comic content, one day it came up with Wes's channel. And, Wes was talking about, I think he was on, it was an early aficionados, and it had him and some other guests. And then some other videos of his came on. And then I saw him talking to somebody on Twitter. So I just responded that I really liked the channel. I watched the channel and I really liked it, because we were kind of like in the same conversation. And then he messaged me and he was like, well, would you ever want to come on the show? And I was like, sure. What do I need? I haven't done a lot of, I said, I've got like a couple of things. I've done a little bit of like YouTube unbooxing videos and things like that, just messing around. I've never like been a guest on anything. And you go back and you watch those original shows and I'm like, like you don't find your cadence and you don't kind of find your voice and get the confidence. It takes time. But then I was going on aficionados and destroying any option I had of working for the big two, by being honest. So it was off to the races. But you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything. There's nothing that Marvel or DC could offer me that's better than the people that I've met in the YouTube community, in the fan, in our fan community, the people that watch us, the people that come up at shows and talk to us, and thank us for even the pros that come up and are like, I can't say anything publicly because I'll get blacklisted. But I really appreciate the things that you guys are saying and doing in the space. And there's other pros that like don't care because it's like they're just like, oh yeah, I watch the show, and it's like, I'll talk to you, I don't care, because just because you talk to somebody, this is always the thing. It's like, I'm so tired of getting messages from people where they're like, oh, you're talking to so and so, you shouldn't be talking to them, and I'm like, piss off. Like, like I'm talking to you, aren't I? What if somebody came and said I shouldn't be talking to you? Like,
high school drama. That's just the high school stupidity. Oh, you shouldn't be talking to this person. This person's a danger. It's like, what the fuck is wrong? We're just having a normal conversation. It's like, I always hated those people. They were always more concerned with what you're doing than anything that they're doing. It's like, dude, we're just having a there's nothing going on. We're just talking. That's it. Like, people that want to be over dramatic for no reason whatsoever, just to be over dramatic, because they're so bored in life. They have to have something happen. And it's like, I hate people like that. Some of these guys can just be cool. Not everything has to be this attack or conspiracy theory getting planned, man. Fucking hate.
Well, and that's the thing too. You never change anybody's mind, or you never build any bridges, or you never squash any beef by not talking to people. Yeah. So, it's like, I just try to keep an open dialogue. If Heather Ontos messaged me tomorrow and was like, you know what, I want to have a conversation about some of the shit you've said, in regards to me, I'd be like, okay, let's have a conversation. And I wouldn't be mean to her. I would be completely polite, and try to find some common ground with her. And, she could point out why she thinks I'm an a-hole, and I would point out why I think that the stuff that she says is dumb. And, we could have a conversation about it. And it's not personal for me. I guess it becomes personal for a lot of people. But I'm always willing to have a dialogue with people. I'm always willing to talk.
You know what I learned? It basically feels like with conversations now with people, they take it from sort of like, I guess from their point of view, well, the number one word I always hear is hate. It's like, this person is spreading hate. And it's like, I don't know if people actually notice that with a lot of these people. All they say is that you shouldn't talk to this person. They spread hate. And you just ask, what do you mean by that? it's like you see in those videos of people in the protest. What do you mean by this? What are you trying to get at here? They can't answer. They give you some fallacy, slurred, non-mumbling argument. They're just repeating talking points they're getting from someone else. They have to.
Yeah, it's like we talk about it all the time. There's a lot of people who have received opinions. They haven't done any critical thinking themselves. They haven't investigated. They've been told this, and because it matches, their confirmation bias, they just roll with it.
Right.
I want to know why you think what you think. I want to and those are the conversations that become uncomfortable, and that's why a lot of people don't want to talk, because they don't feel confident that they're going to be able to defend their position under scrutiny. So it's easier just to cut you off. I'll talk about my positions, and you can. I would like you to try to poke holes in my positions, because I would like to know where the holes are so that I can find out if they can be plugged, or God forbid that I'm wrong and that I didn't have all the information and I've been wrong.
I figured out. I think they hate to come to this realization that they were wrong about their outlook on something, and that it would require them to think about things in a much more broader aspect. Like these guys view things from the lens of race constantly, but then they'll never view it from any other point of view. It's just always about race, or it's about politics or this, or, if you just view life in that aspect in every way possible that way, it's like, well, why would anyone want to have a conversation with you? I don't have a conversation. You probably going to come off like some insufferable prick, honestly, It's like,
if you can't
hear people talk on videos, do you want to talk to those people? I don't. That sounds excruciating.
Yeah, no, if you can't go into a conversation with the idea that there is a chance, maybe, as unlikely as it is, but there is a chance that you don't know what the hell you're talking about. If you can't even entertain the possibility of that, then you're never going to have a fruitful conversation. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'll tell you a story that happened this week. And I think you might even have been in the conversation at some point, or at least on the same subject. But someone was pointing out oh, there's a panel in Yaira, and here's a picture of the hand. And Eric had explained that, if you look, this isn't an additional finger. This is a piece of her costume that's coming down.
I did.
Yeah. And, if I was the editor on that book, maybe I would have said, take that out. It's a tangent. But maybe also I wouldn't have, But and then, so that once that was disproven, then it was well, look at how unnatural her hand is, and et cetera, et cetera. And I said, psst, comic book art is sometimes hyper realistic. Not every pose has to be, an exact pose that somebody can get into. That's what I meant by it. But I was being sarcastic, and sometimes sarcasm doesn't go over well. And so somebody responded, and I thought he was responding to the person that was responding to me, but he was like, you guys are so super, hypercritical and blah, 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 every little thing about these books. And then he and I kind of got into an argument. And then I realized that he was thinking that my statement was criticizing the art, and I said, no, I'm actually, and I was kind of snarky because he was kind of getting my goat a little bit, and I tend to give whatever energy you bring to me, I'm going to give back.
No, for sure, yeah.
And so he was kind of being feisty, so I got feisty, and I said, you need better reading comprehension. I am defending the art, and he goes, oh, if that's what you're doing, then I guess maybe I do. You need better reading comprehension.
Happen again. Did you see it for the second post? There was another one that I'm pretty sure you saw. It was with the character Saoirse. They have the redhead, and someone just basically went art correction. And Eric wasn't really talking bad on that person. People took that post the wrong way. It's mostly of the fact that he said that anyone could see an art picture and critique certain things that they would do about it. That's the point of the post. When people took it you guys can't take criticism and also or nonsense. But any random person online could go, hey, this art and this finger, this hand looks bad. I could do it better. But it's yeah, you probably can when you see things from I forgot the saying, when you see things from an open point of view and not seeing it from the inside. And keep in mind, I don't understand about comic book art. It's supposed to look exaggerated. This isn't real. This isn't real life by any stretch of the imagination. Women won't look like Saoirse, because if they did, well, I probably would have 5 kids with him. But
Rob Liefeld's never drawn a realistic looking drawing in his life.
Ever.
But has he drawn comics that look exciting to people? Yes.
Yeah.
And
Todd McFarlane's famous Spider-Man cover. I don't think we're going to get a Peter Parker that looks like that anytime soon. But it looks pretty cool.
No, for Peter Parker to be in some of those McFarlane poses from back in the day, he'd have to have broken hips. It's fine. He's the Spider-Man. He has extra
Yeah,
agility that we don't have. You know, it's okay. And so yeah, so but I liked the fact the guy said like, oh, I guess maybe I do need better reading comprehension. And then I felt bad because now I've like dissed him and he's gone like, oh, I was wrong. And it takes a big person to say, oh, I guess I was wrong, especially on the internet when you're on an anonymous account. He could have doubled, tripled down and kept fighting, but he actually went, oh, you know what? My bad. And I responded to him and I said, you know what? My honor has been satisfied and we part as friends.
The recent one you had where Eric put out the ad for more comic artists and colorists. That's it. Just basically a job ad. And then all you said was, for all of you struggling artists out there, opportunities available. And then the one guy replies to you, the first one, and he says, experience with 3D assets is a plus. And then you said, no disrespect, but I'm not interested in the indie sphere tribalism. I'm concerned with getting some of the many artists that contact me for work, some work. And he said, revealing. And you said, if you say so. And he said, I do. And he just said, I don't know what that's meant to imply, but
you know, it's like, I don't know what that implies. What does that imply? Does that imply you're going to go tattle on me to somebody that like I didn't I didn't choose to diss the Rippaverse books? Like when pressed, I actually just said, hey, if it's more important to me that artists get work, you know, I'll die on that hill. That's fine. You know, I have so many artists that contact me all the time, and they're like, "Hey, there's no work out there. Are you doing a book? You know, can you throw me any work on Doomface, or do you have like anybody who needs an artist and things like that?" And I try to look out for them. So when Eric July, who is printing a ton of books, you know, it's like they're almost up to like what, monthly releases
at this point. Yeah, feels like.
Yeah. So when he's actually going out, and you know, I know that this is going to piss some people off, and I don't care. Because I'm not, don't paw at me with your dirty little gills, okay? But he is actually out there spending money to hire guys like Chuck Dixon, like Mike Barron, guys that have been blacklisted in the industry to do books for him. He's hiring artists. He's hiring warehouse employees. He's hiring fulfillment people. My friend Cara works there, you know, as customer service, you know, love her to death. She is a wonderful person. He's actually employing people. So whatever your beef is with him personally, that's your business. But don't expect me to hate the people that you hate. Because if somebody told me that I should hate you just because they hate you, I'm not going to do it. So like try to extend the same courtesy to others.
That's
but also,
what everyone does. Yeah. And I hate that. Yeah. Because someone else told you should do it. You should do it. You know, that makes you an NPC, right? That's no different from an NPC at all. Like people that say that they watch CNN and MSNBC. It's like, yeah, don't be an NPC in life. Try to have some own thought for yourself, you know?
I don't understand people in the independent sphere who are attacking each other. Are there people that I don't like in the independent sphere? Or there books that I don't like? Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I leave them alone. I don't talk about them. Do you know why? Because we're all in the independent sphere trying to build something together. And even though everything in it and all of the personalities in it are not for me, I don't want to be the mainstream. I don't want to be a backstabby, clicky little, you know, bunch of bitches that are always complaining about each other and backstabbing each other. I want to actually build an alternative to the industry. I want to be a part of that. And so when a guy who is employing people, whether you like his books or not, whether you like his politics or not, whether you like him personally or not, when he says jobs available, and I know people who need jobs, I'm going to promote the fact that you could go there and get a job.
And people here are always asking for work. You literally see it all the time. I don't get it with some of the people here. It feels like every day, because you see it too. It feels like every day when someone just has a slightly different opinion from someone, it just like, it feels like World War III. You know, it's like literally people that it feels like it's just trying to make something happen when it really shouldn't be. There shouldn't be this much drama in comic books. And then I realized we're a bunch of like hyper-focused nerds in a confined space. For
right?
Yeah. So obviously about that, it kind of makes sense why there should be a lot of drama here. And keep in mind, it's in the indie sphere, so you're already competing for like niche of people in such a confined space anyway, you know? So there already is less people available for you in the indie space, and now you're all competing for that. And it's like, damn, I guess there probably is going to be a lot of freaking swords pulled out and a lot of gun firings too, if you think about it that way.
I feel like every nerd, every person that likes this sort of stuff is maybe a little bit on the spectrum somehow.
You could tell, yeah.
because we're obsessed with things that not everybody's obsessed with, and we get into the deep lore and things like that. And I've been to Transformers conventions, I've been to GI Joe conventions, I've been to regular comic conventions. I've been to all this stuff. I've seen nerds almost come to blow arguing over which one is red and which one is blue, Rumble or Frenzy. Like, I've seen nerds almost get into a fist fight over that. I've seen the Star Wars versus Star Trek debate end friendships. I have a friend that he stopped talking to his best friend in college for 3 years because they had an argument over how time travel would work. It's like, all of this is way too, you take all of this way too seriously. Mm-hmm. It should be fun, but because of the nature of, I guess, the weaponized autism that we nerds have, it feels personal, and it doesn't to me. That's the thing. It doesn't feel personal to me. I hate Disney Star Wars. If you love it, I think you're wrong, but we can still be friends.
Yeah.
Now I will say, if you go over to somebody's house on a date and they tell you that they love Disney Star Wars, don't sleep with them.
Or if you did, I would say put it in another place that won't grant you the access of having kids. I'll just say that.
Wait a minute, are you talking about butt stuff?
I think don't go to any Disney parties, but if that girl is like, hey, I've did anal before, you know what? That's probably the best thing you could ask for, because having kids with that one would probably be getting you the child support for 18 years and you don't want. Just saying, just putting the idea out there.
Look, don't bang married people, and don't bang people that like Disney Star Wars. Those are good rules to live by.
The comic industry,
Like, no, what's funny is, like, one time I was in a car with a friend, and that Meatloaf song came on. I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. And she goes, "What do you think Meatloaf's talking about?" And without missing a beat, I said, "Butt stuff." He's not into it. He's not going to do it. He'll do anything for love, but not that.
God, man. Like, people don't know, I love comic books. I mean, I love them so much. I mean, if people know how much money I spent on these things, you would probably call me crazy. But I even love when new books get announced. Like, people don't like Tom King, but I will say this. If you like him and you just heard that his new omnibus got announced for himself, I'm happy for you that you got something from one of your favorite creators. I truly am. Now, I don't really care for the guy all too much because I've heard some really crazy things about this guy. But, people have to normalize understanding that people will just disagree with them. And that's just how life is. And it's not the end of the world. That's it.
Well,
there's
also,
people out there.
You have to like take into account too at what level people came in. So if you just got into comic books, mm-hmm. and Tom King is some of the first stuff that you read, you might think it's amazing.
Probably be a little bit of bias there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the more you get exposed to, then maybe your attitude changes. There's movies that I thought were great, and then the more I learned about storytelling, and the more I learned about acting, and the more I learned about the way, then you look back at them and you can see the flaws. It doesn't mean you don't still have that rush of nostalgia for them, but you begin to see that, like, hey, it's an evolution. It's like when people talk about, I remember there was a big debate. I think it was Cully Hamner was really pissed one year about, he was saying that, like, cosplay girls were ruining comics.
Oh,
and I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, that's ridiculous. I said, first of all, it's not like, as somebody who went to comic book conventions when it was just a bunch of nerds standing around, it was a total sausage fest. I'm just glad there's some women there. And the fact that a lot of them are also really attractive and really excited about comic book characters and wanting to dress up as them and be sexy and have a good time, that makes the show more fun. People get to come down with their kids, and hey, these people are dressed up in costume, and the kids get to take pictures with them. Not necessarily the sexy ones, but just people who are enthusiastic about the characters. They get to do all that. It's big fun. It creates more of a carnival atmosphere, and I'm for it. And I remember there were like people who were like, yeah, she's dressed as Kitty Pryde, but I bet she doesn't know what Kitty Pryde's first appearance was. And I'm like, when you got into comics, you didn't know what Kitty Pryde's first appearance was. It's a learning curve. Everybody enters at different places. Like, just give people some time to find out what they're into and what they want to learn about.
That's what I've always said too. That's the biggest problem in comic books is, like, a bunch of people that have been kind of have been kind of in it for so long want to dictate how other people enjoy it. I've told people before, if you like modern comics, you think they're the best shit written since sliced bread, I'm genuinely happy for you. That's awesome. you know. But if you don't like them and you like older stuff, that's great too. You know, you can enjoy different things from different points of view, no matter what time you come in, right? Like,
Yeah.
also with this, don't be one of those guys where like you're just kind of overbearing in how you say things. And it's like getting new people in, because there's people that could get into comic books, but there's like these the actual nerd stereotype. You have a nasally talking weirdo who stinks, probably didn't take showers, just giving you all of his opinions and being like, you shouldn't like this because this is bad. And it's like, well, how about someone just discovers what they like is good and you just kind of talk to them about it? Because that's what a conversation is, you know? It's like there's too many like stuck up nerds and it just makes it kind of unbearable, you know? No one wants to go to a comic shop and just hear a bunch of stuck up nerds giving them advice. That's like, that's not even like, you gotta just make it not come back in.
Well, especially if you're in the business of selling comic books. Like if you own a comic book store and someone wants to buy a comic from you, don't discourage them. Don't tell them that comic sucks. It's like, you don't like it, but don't tell them it sucks. If I worked in a comic book store and somebody came in and said, I want the Tom King omnibus, I'd say, here you go. You know?
You're like,
and then if they,
for me.
Yeah. And then if they wanted, because that's what they want. And, you know, give the customer what they want. Be a hot dog vendor. If they asked me, do you think this is the best comic ever? I would say no. Let me recommend some things to you that I like that I think you might like as well. And I would introduce them to that. But I wouldn't denigrate the thing that they're buying. There's too much of that. There's too much of the please do not bang your head on the counter. It contains a very rare Mary Worth, wherein she advises a friend to commit suicide. There's too many of those guys in comic books.
Yeah, those guys. Oh man, just insufferable. God, man, it's just a bunch of people who want to basically kind of like dictate who should really be reading what. And it's like, even if someone read stuff that I didn't enjoy, or they do read it and they do enjoy it, I just want to know why you enjoyed it or didn't like it. We just talk because of it, you know, because comic books is so vast and big. There's plenty of conversations to be had. There are people now that say that older stuff is just overrated and not good. I want to hear why they think it's overrated and not good, you know? Mm-hmm. Great conversation to have.
I had a friend, you know, it's like I have a lot of friends that are in cosplay. And I had one friend, I remember she messaged me and she said, hey, a friend of mine made this Scarlet Witch costume. And she's not going to be able to wear it. She's not going to be able to go to the show. She made it and then she got pregnant and now she's starting to show and it doesn't fit right. And so she's giving it to me. But I don't know anything about the Scarlet Witch. Can you recommend some great Scarlet Witch stories so I can learn about the character before I cosplay her? And I was like, absolutely. You know, yeah. And so I sent her a list. And I think that's the attitude that everybody should have, is how do we get more people in? You know, the way that you save comics is you introduce them to the stuff that you love, the stuff that you know is good. And then they start picking that up and then they get into it. That's how, you know, you can steer people away from the bad stuff without being an a-hole, and you can steer them toward the good stuff and be supportive. And I feel like if I do
like the idea in the industry, there are jumping on points. You know, jumping on points are great, you know, and I'll always tell people this too: read more than one comic book. Like there's people out there that only read like Ripaverse stuff or other people's stuff. And it's like, I would always say diversify your portfolio. That way, it's kind of like movies. You understand which genres of movies you like, which type of TV shows you like. If you only stick with one genre, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice, not getting out there and branching out to different styles of comic book writers and artists, stuff like that, you know?
Mm-hmm. And then once you've done that, you'll know why you like the things you like, why you don't like certain things.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to define it when people ask you about it, and you won't just have to clam up and be quiet and I'm not talking to you. You know, you'll be able to actually have conversations about this. And this is the funny thing, is like everybody bitches about YouTube and like, oh, the YouTubers are negative and blah, blah, blah. And it's just nerds that are angry about things. That's always been the comic shop. It used to be in the comic shop. You would get together with your friends, you would buy your comics, and you would go, you know, get coffee or whatever and sit there and read. And then, you know, talk about the things you loved and talk about the things that you hated. But it's just now it's online. And now, you know, you can come to Aficionados every Saturday, and you're basically getting a comic book discussion panel that you would normally only get at a comic book convention. But instead of it just being 50 minutes and then they cut it off so that they can bring in Kevin Smith to talk about whatever the hell he's doing, you know, you can actually sit there and enjoy it for 2.5 hours. You know, we'll have a long form conversation. Or you go and you watch EFAP and you watch those guys talk about a movie in exacting detail. And you're like, this movie is 2 hours long. And this video about the movie is 6 hours long.
Never forget the Mahler 10-hour video with Doctor Strange 2. Never forget that one. Oh my God. You could put that on. It'll still be playing when you wake up to go to work. That's how long that video is.
No, one of the things I love about Mahler is I can put him on in the background, or I can put on Robot Head, or or Drinker, or any of these guys that like do it. You know, well, Drinkers videos are shorter, and Robot Heads are shorter. But like, you know, you put on a Mahler video in the background, and I love listening to those guys in the background because it's like I don't have to give it my full attention, because there's nothing going on screen that I need to see. So but like they'll give you like a a great review. And with Mahler, like sometimes I'll be like, okay, that's enough, and I'll turn it off. But then when I go back to YouTube, I'll watch a video, and then it'll be like the next video will go in and pick up the Mahler video where I left off. And so I can digest that 10-hour stream about Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. I can digest it over the period of 3 weeks.
Just thank God I will never watch Multiverse of Madness ever again, unless we're doing like an MCU rewatch where you like review all the movies and stuff like that. Oh my God, that movie is just not good. But last few things I'll ask you. It's getting a little late here, and you got to get up for work in the morning. Same here with me. I got to get back to fucking 6 in the morning. Holy Christ, man!
Yeah, I got a lot. I got to finish up editing The Atlantean tomorrow.
Work? Oh God, you have to do work.
Yeah.
Your book's coming out in 5 years from now, man. You're doing it wrong. Quality.
I'm editing other people's comic books. It's fun.
Rob Liefeld has a 10-year late book. Oh God, Rob Liefeld. Holy shit.
I'm still waiting on a book I backed when Comicsgate started called like Bermuda 13 or something like that. I don't think I'm ever getting it.
There's one guy that came out and made fun of Ethan, and people are praising him, even though that guy himself has 5-year late book. It's crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the same guy that kind of did the whole throat goat thing. You look into him, he has a 5-year late book.
Oh, Dan Fraga.
Yeah, it's like, why are we praising this guy? It's no different. I hate doing that. People like, he's on my team, so I must praise it. It's like, no, it's the same thing. It's the same.
I haven't paid I don't pay any attention to any of that. Like,
me neither.
So
really,
I don't know
not anymore.
So I know that I'm aware that there's a fight, but I don't know what it's about, and I don't know
who isn't Ethan fighting with though. It's like feels like an everyday thing. Who hasn't he interacted with in such a God? That guy is just a human being of all time. I'll give him that. But last thing to ask you, man, is first thing, which is, do you have anything planned coming up outside of Kneel Before Doomface that you want to let people know about?
So I just finished the edit on Unholy Nightmare number 2. So if you picked up Unholy Nightmare number 1, this one is actually I think it's much better than the first. I think the first issue you got to establish a lot of things. That's why when I did the Justice League pitch, I wrote the second issue spec script instead of doing a first issue, because the first issue you got to lay the foundation, and it's not necessarily the most interesting or compelling. So I think that this issue is the first one laid the groundwork, and now this one is getting into the story, and it's got a finale page to it that has such a great reveal that I wish that I'd thought of it first. And I love working on books like that, when somebody does something so cool that you're like, oh, I wish that was mine. So I'm working on that. I'm working on The Atlantean with Russ Leach. I got to finish up edits on that tomorrow. I'm working on a book called Vincent Spector for Brett Vassie. And so I'm finishing up that edit. And then there's a couple of other things that people want me to look at, so I've got to contact them tomorrow. I got a lot of stuff I got to do tomorrow that's all comic book related, but you know what? Since it is all comic book related, it's a lot of fun. So I got no complaints.
Yeah, I love it when we have shows here where we just review books. Those are the most fun I ever have. We talk about topics here, and can't wait to have Chip Zdarsky, a Canadian, writing Captain America. Can't wait for that one. That's just what every American looks forward to, a Canadian writing a character about your country.
Well, considering some of the people that they've left or that they've let write Captain America in the last several years, I don't think that Chip Zdarsky is the worst choice.
Good Lord. Feels like the J. Michael Straczynski run just kind of came and went. Like no one even cared it existed.
No one talked about it. I didn't read it because I was kind of waiting to hear whether or not it was good, because that's kind of like my default position now, because so much is bad. Yeah, I was waiting to hear, and then I just never heard anything about it. And I kind of forgot that it existed.
So much stuff comes out, you just don't hear anything about it. You're just like, man, that must fucking suck. I'm hearing so many bad things about One World Under Doom. I'm like, why would I ever?
I did read that for the for aficionados, and I mean, I didn't buy it, but I read the review copy, and talk about an event that's a non-event.
It's standing around talking about things that they could be doing, but they're just talking.
It's just about a bunch of dumb allegories that don't make any sense. Like vampires are now an allegory for illegal immigration, and it's like, I don't know if that's making the point that you think it's making. These people that at any moment could like lose control and like suck the blood out of an innocent person. I don't know if I would have gone with that if I was trying to make people sympathetic towards illegal immigration, but you do you, boo. You're Canadian, Ryan North.
Oh,
you do you.
The last thing I'll ask you, man, is there any shout outs when you get to anyone in particular, and anything else you want to say before we head out?
Yeah, just come check us out on Comic Book Aficionados. Also check out the channel Culture Popped. I'll be on there this Tuesday with Josh.
Awesome.
Talking about all the new stuff of the week. Yeah, no, swing by. Pop into the chat. Yeah, give us some shit. We love it. And then sometimes I'm on World Class Bullshitters. I'm all over the place. I am a dirty.
I love that name. That's one of the best YouTube channel names of all time. That is easily a top 10 for me. Look, channel called World Class.
They've got a lot of little. Like, Jeff has a lot of little bits that I love. Like I love the English lady that says, the following is a World Class Bullshitters exclusive. I'm like, ooh, classy. Like when you get into the video. No, there's just so many great channels out there to check out. But yeah, come by and talk to us. Have more conversations about comics and pop culture. We absolutely love it. And go check out Thinking Critical. I'm on there every week and almost every Saturday for Comics Aficionados.
Yes, sir. So yeah, make sure you guys go and back Kneel Before Doomface. It's almost about to go to print. So if you want to get your copy, go and do that. Me and Aaron, we'll see each other next week, literally in person at the meetup.
I know it's like it's next week. It's unbelievable. It's like it came up like time goes by so fast now. Like I don't know if it's just because.
Were you at the meetup last year? Because I was there.
No.
I didn't see you there last year.
No, I was there the previous year. I want to say.
Okay.
But I missed.
I can't wait to go out there. First day, because I say no, I'm a nerd. I'm going to Cosmic Comics again. That place felt like I was a kid in a candy store. This is amazing. Because for that week, I won't need to order my titles from my comic shop.com. I told you before, I have a shop around me. So I'll be able to just go to a store and just, what's crazy, going into a store and actually buying comic books. Crazy, right, guys?
On New Comic Book Day? Like, what the hell? Like, it's been forever since I've done that.
There's some stuff to pick up there. And, I always just enjoy, I know I'm going to overspend there, but I enjoy it because I'm helping a shop out. And that's what matters to me personally. If I go a little bit overpriced, doesn't matter. It's a book that I'm going to read anyway at some point, Yeah,
I think I got a couple of hours before the event when I get into town. I'm doing a real quick turnaround. And I think you said you are too. But it's like when I get into town, I'll have like a couple of hours. Maybe I'll go check out Cosmic Comics. That sounds like fun.
It's big in there. It's huge.
Yeah,
I love it.
It'd be nice to go to a big store again. Now there's only like small stores out in Southern California because nobody can afford a big one because of how expensive it is here. Oh damn! Gavin Newsom basically made it a place. Remember that video that showed at San Francisco? This mall is just a ghost town because no one wanted to be there because it's too expensive. Yeah, even like the streets, like like a lot of businesses just didn't come back after COVID because the city they've turned it into a shithole. It literally, it's like you have maps to avoid the most pooped on streets, and just drug needles in the streets, and people on meth and fentanyl just like tripping out. It really is. It's like walking through a zombie apocalypse, but there's also just random zombies that are demon possessed too. There was the one a few years back in 2023 where the person was just someone got hit by a train and the person just decided to eat their remains. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, no, we were driving through a couple of years ago. This is years ago, even before it got really bad. But we were driving through the Tenderloin, and I just said, "Hey, let's roll our window up so that the crazy meth hobos don't spit AIDS into our mouths." Because that was just how bad it was. Oh God, California, guys, is a crazy place, but there are great places to visit here. Just don't go to San Francisco. Just telling you right now. No. Actually, LA is better to visit than San Francisco, probably. And LA's not safe, so that tells you something. Yeah, it was great to have Aaron on for a second appearance. We'll see each other literally next week. So, if you see me as a white black guy, you'll be like, oh my God, he's white. So I'm definitely not black. I'll tell you that. You're like, oh my God, a black man, he's going to rob me. It's like that episode of Family Guy. I'll be like, wait a minute. You didn't vote for Biden. You ain't black. God. You know that episode of Family Guy where Stewie wakes up from a nap and he's like, he sees Jerome for the first time. He's like, are we getting robbed? Family Guy in context is some of the funniest shit known to man. Good. Oh yeah, no, there's some they got away with some crazy shit on there. I mean, the JFK I think it's some of the jokes. You can't make that JFK joke now. If you guys know what the JFK one is. That kills me because I had an exact same joke written into a script. And there's a couple of things that Seth MacFarlane has done that I had written for future scripts. Oh, that, I've had to kill since Family Guy. One last quick thing. Do you know how everyone's getting their stuff reprinted and collected editions, like compendiums and stuff? Is any of your stuff, have you ever gotten offered to have Darkwing Duck or stuff you've written collected in compendiums or hardcovers or trades and that stuff recently? No, if I'm not mistaken, Dynamite is not allowed to reprint my stuff. I think Disney won't let them reprint James and my stuff because they did that omnibus and they were like, it's every Darkwing comic ever. And everybody in the chat was like, everybody in the chat was like, no, it's not. Where's Sparrow and Silvani's stuff? And they just never really addressed it. So I think there might actually be a kill order. Don't hire them. Don't reprint their stuff. I mean, our stuff we did push the envelope. And so we did a bunch of stuff that's not allowed now. Like, we had all kinds of Disney references in the book, to other properties, but that was Darkwing. But like now you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that in comics.
It's offensive now to do those.
So
things.
yeah, so maybe maybe it can't be reprinted for that reason. We also had
bullshit because everyone else's stuff gets reprinted for it to be out there in a new collected edition. So it's new, the art's the same, but it's updated paperwork and everything. But no, it's just you were problematic. It means you stuff can't get reprinted ever. It's like, oh my god, so petty for no reason.
I don't think we really did anything problematic except for maybe the Disney references. But when you tell Don Rosa that you can no longer that some of his stories that are part of The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, which is a classic that's been reprinted a million times, when he gets told that like, yeah, we're not reprinting your stories anymore because they're problematic, Disney's lost the plot.
It's true.
Well, but here's the thing: if you want to read my Darkwing stuff, just message me on Instagram or Twitter, and I will send it to you in a PDF.
That's good because the industry is full of just complete backstabbing, worthless pieces of shit. It's so crazy we're at this point now. But yeah, it was great having you on, man, for the second time. And thank you guys for checking out this episode of the MSK